As we said, not all Republicans are on the same page as President Trump when it comes to tariffs and to what he said on gun control in that meeting. Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse has some serious problems about what the president has been saying. He joins us live tonight. Senator, thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
Let's start about steel and aluminum. You have a real problem with what the president announced today. Why?
Trade is great for America. Trade is great for American families, and no trade war has ever worked. We don't want to make America 1930 again, and the forgotten men and women of America don't want to be drafted into a trade war. It doesn't work. Trade creates jobs. All the data shows that, and trade lowers prices for American families. Trade wars do the opposite.
Your statement was read to Sarah Sanders today. Here's what she said, and then listen to the trade representative, Lighthizer.
I don't know that the president will or should ever apologize for protecting American workers, and certainly not to Senator Sasse.
The president ran on this. He feels strongly about it. When I talk to him, it's workers, ranchers, farmers. That's it. It's wages and it's jobs. The president's objective is we have to get more jobs back to America. We have to reduce the deficit, and that will ultimately put pressure on wages.
So do you believe that there are countries that are dumping steel into the U.S.?
There are, and there are extant laws that we should use for dispute resolution. But here's what happens if you start down a trade war path. Like you said in the last segment, if you own a steel mill, today was great for you. You consume steel, and every American family at the store tonight bought something that has different metals in it. Today's a bad day for you, and that's just the first day. When the trade war gets worse, it means there's going to be retaliatory tariffs against the farmers and ranchers of America and the producers and the workers of America. We're going to lose as consumers and producers.
But just to explain it to people at home, there are countries who charge more for steel at home and then put their steel in the U.S. at a lower price, which then burdens those companies. And if you talk to the states where they saw many jobs leave, a lot of those states Donald Trump won by 55, 60, 65%. So they're saying, why not repatriate the American supply chain and do it all here?
Yeah, so what trade has done over the last many decades, it has driven down prices for American consumers, and it's created jobs. There are all sorts of challenges with what China does, but what that requires is that we engage more in Asia Pacific, not pull back. There's nothing China wants more.
This president's already said, and he ran on this, that he wasn't going to be in the TPP, that he ran around the country on this platform, and the country elected him. So for the people who say, why doesn't that matter, how do you respond?
Yeah, so this is leftist economic policy, and we've tried it a whole bunch of times over the last 2 centuries, and every time American families have suffered. It's bad policy. I get that the president ran on a bunch of this, but there are a whole bunch of issues where once he got into the White House, he started listening to advisors, and he got to positions that are better for the country in the long term. His regulatory reform agenda has been great. This trade policy will be disastrous.
Okay. The other thing that you have a big concern about is what he said about guns and basically due process. He's since, the White House has since walked back that and said, you know, he wasn't talking about affecting the Second Amendment. But you kind of jumped on that and put out a statement about what he said in that meeting.
Yeah, so here's what America means. It means that we believe that rights come to us from God via nature, and government exists to secure and protect our rights. Doesn't give us rights. And when you say something like, we'll take the guns first, we'll grab the guns first, and later we'll have a due process conversation, what that means is government is first, and hopefully you have a bureaucrat that you trust to decide what rights you have. That's not how America works. So American citizens have the whole Bill of Rights available to them, and then in the cases of people who are deranged or have committed crimes, then we do due process and we take away certain privileges that they have.
Do you think that that there is a possibility of getting something on school safety and guns out of this Congress?
I think yesterday you saw David French issue a proposal that the White House was paying some attention to. It didn't get a lot of play in yesterday's kind of reality TV governance meeting that they did. But David French was talking about gun violence restraining orders, and I think there's some interest in things like that. In the cases of people who have mental health problems, we should obviously do something to make sure that they can't get access to weapons. But that needs to happen via due process, not through some bureaucrat who gets to preordain who gets what First Amendment and Second Amendment rights.
Understanding that you don't like what he said at that meeting, there were a lot of people who looked at the meeting on immigration and the meeting on gun control and said, hey, listen, it's open. He's got Democrats, he's got Republicans, they're throwing out ideas. Why is that so bad to be talked about in kind of a negative light as reality TV?
Well, transparency is great, but you don't try to rewrite the Constitution shooting from the hip. And I think that's what you saw yesterday when you saw Dianne Feinstein from California, giddy as a 3-year-old kid, ecstatic about the idea that there are going to be a whole bunch of new gun bans coming into America.
But you know that's not going to happen, right, Senator? I mean, you're there up on Capitol Hill to prevent that from happening, and this president is not going to push that, is he? Do you truly believe that?
I'm excited about the fact that the White House, which has the biggest megaphone in the world, today said a bunch of more truly American things about the Bill of Rights and what rights American citizens have. Yesterday in that meeting, the tape is the tape, and if you say you're going to grab guns and worry about due process later, that's not something that should give your listeners and viewers a lot of comfort.
You're characterized as one of the Republican senators who's most critical of this president. You, Senator Flake, Senator Corker, fair?
I don't think so. You know, punditry loves to jump on every issue and say, are you pro-Trump or anti-Trump? Are you MAGA or you resist?
All right, but let's just go down the list.
Principle by principle.
Let's go down the list of what many people say are his accomplishments. Tax reform signed into law.
I voted for it.
Neil Gorsuch.
Wonderful. And let's go broader than that. I went on the Judiciary Committee to fight for his judges because he's nominated a whole bunch of great people
Most
to the
federal
bench.
appeals court judges ever confirmed in the first year.
Chuck Grassley, the chairman of our committee from Iowa, has led a really great process, and we set the all-time record last year confirming
Granting
judges.
the permit for the Keystone Pipeline, along with other energy moves, increasing energy
Regulatory reform by this president has been really strong.
860 Obama regulations pulled or suspended. U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
I support it.
Military crackdown on ISIS, largely seen as forcing to retreat from Iraq and Syria in big part.
A lot of progress.
Withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement.
Yep.
Enforce the red line in Syria.
Yep.
There's a Wall Street Journal op-ed that says the only good thing about Donald Trump is all his policies. Fair to say that there are a lot of things that this president has done that you are definitely supportive of, but how he talks about that or his communication of it and how he comports himself, you have a problem with.
No, that's not my problem. So I'm the second most conservative senator by voting record, and I'm one of only 5 people in the U.S. Senate that's never been a politician before. We need a lot of disruption to this system. This city doesn't work. And so one of the great things about the president is it gives us an opportunity to relook at a whole bunch of business as usual things that Washington's been doing that don't work. At a policy level, I support the vast majority of what he's done. Again, judges chief among them. But at the level of basic civics, crisis in this country that the next generation doesn't understand the American idea. 41% of Americans under age 35 tell pollsters they think the First Amendment is dangerous. On the left, you got a whole bunch of people who are disinterested in religious liberty. Polling now tells us that on the right, you got a whole bunch of people that are disinterested in freedom of the press. Well, those freedoms, the 5 freedoms of the First Amendment, religion, press, speech, assembly, protest, they're all bundled up as one thing. We haven't taught civics in this country for 40 or 50 years, and right now we're not doing a better job of that. When you say things from the national bully pulpit of, we'll grab the guns first and we'll deal with due process later, that didn't help and solve our civics problem. So my concerns are primarily about passing on the American idea of a free republic to the next generation. At the level of policy, there's a whole bunch of stuff I'm doing behind the scenes to help this administration, and I applaud a lot of it.
Senator, we appreciate your time as always.
Thanks for having me.